Oh hey, didn't see you there. As you can see, I'm auditioning to be the next anime protagonist. Now, I think I have the look down, so all I really need to nail now is the mannerisms. Eh? 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 This gotta be wild.
The anime protagonist, the eyes, ears, brain, and sometimes penis of the narrative point in the story. Over anime's extensive years as a platform for these guys to get their tales told, the impact, evolution, and modernization of standard character writing has hit its highs and lows from what is essentially the blank check of a character for authors.
And yet they choose to go with plain-faced McGee over here.
Now, hold your horses, Mr. Cynic, we'll get to that. Because yes, while a case of mild Xerox syndrome in the anime industry could be made, first we have to address what makes an anime protagonist, what their purpose constitutes in the story, and how they fall and rise in situations where their existence and culture can be relegated beyond their standard peers in other mediums. Essentially, why the names Toya Mochizuki, Pseudo Kaname, and Sakura Hane aren't in the typical anime watcher's memory, while others like Goku, Kirito, and Sailor Moon are, to a point that I don't even have to show you an image of them because you already know them well enough for your brain to process that one doujinshi you vividly remember them from.
The first thing you need to know about the anime protagonist is who they are. Now, your first thought may be someone who's probably highly regarded, like Maka from Soul Eater or Eren Yeager from Attack on Titan. And while having those types of examples doesn't hurt, what we have to look at is the bigger picture. What makes Maka or Eren or so-and-so worthwhile, and what makes them stand out apart from everyone else, or not so?
A key trait your typical anime protag has is a degree of perspective idealization, meaning how well the audience can get behind the narrative viewpoint. It's what makes sympathizing with characters like Naruto and Violet Evergarden so immersive, or how despicable but engaging someone like Makoto Ito is.
For example, take Lelouch from Code Geass. Now, he is a controversial figure in anime culture and in his own story, for lack of a better word. But why he's a controversial figure is not really up for debate. He's just an overall interesting character. Whether you'll love him, hate him, think he goes a little too far, or agree with a lot of what he does with a grain of salt. Now, the same principle can be said for Charlie Brown's Booger Conceit cousin. As a protagonist, he is easily hateable, but is also that fun hatred that everyone can get behind that makes it so easy to remember him.
This is also why plenty of anime seem to have the same lead with a different nameplate. What's easier to paint the image of a personality onto other than a blank canvas? While they can have minor differences in their traits, much of what amounts to their character is how they react to the story progressions and very common tropes. Isekai anime are pretty infamous for this. You have a guy reincarnated or something into this world of fantasy, and lo and behold, he's overpowered in skills or cheat mechanics and undeveloped in personality. These types of protagonists typically follow one of three formulas to their tropes. A Joe Schmo with a temperament of a soggy communion wafer and an entourage of thirsty nuns, a nerds rule the planet kind of guy, who in actuality probably wouldn't last 5 minutes in the world without luck and their OP bullshit, and Shadow the Hedgehog.
Now, this isn't gonna be 100% the case. There are gonna be characters who break out of these types of roles to roll with decent writing and some authorship to form a unique character, like Shiroi from Log Horizon. And then there are gonna be characters who generally don't fit any type, and will actually shape into their own mold, like Rimuru from light novel title Slime Edition. Or, a girl. As if that happens too often. Of course, given this, I think I'm a good candidate for an isekai adventure. Asian, black hair, overcompensating personality. I check all the boxes to die a gruesome death and be reincarnated into a world tailored to my very limited skills.
Speaking of black hair, design also makes a significant part of the protagonist. Unless you're an Asian gunning for an isekai spot or looking for a high school romance, if you don't look cool, don't even bother trying to be the main character.
Look at me. Even I'm not sure I'm the main character in my own life, which is why isekai is the way.
Design is much more than simply grabbing the audience's first impressions. A character's design is key to telling their story before even saying a word. JoJo's Jotaro is a fine example of this. His composed but punctuated posturing that tells us of his bold actions, his ragged but fast and sensible dress code addresses his non-caring attitude but not to an extent on how he looks, his unflinching scowl that reads out like a natural restraining order. It's this range paired with cultural knowledge and plain human magnetism toward exceptional design that makes a character art 101. By all accounts, Jotaro's character sheet is probably a modern-day Vitruvian man.
You could do this analysis with any foremost character, and see what would make them prime protagonist material or store-brand knockoffs. But it is these pronounced designs that make following their stories at least slightly more interesting. Like with leads such as Ryoko Matoi and Hestia and Mia. I'm starting to see a pattern here.
Yes, you can't talk about anime character design without talking about the elephant in the room, fanservice. Now, fanservice itself isn't entirely bad. Guts from Berserk is pure badassery. Ryas Grimmery's look is actually pivotal in Issei's growth in his story. It just so happens that that story also uses one stone to kill two Ds. Even when I was talking about JoJo just then, or really any of the JoJos, there's a sense of style and flair to their performance because of said style and flair. That being said, fanservice serves as eye candy too.
Come on.
From cuteness to coolness to, well, Issei's growth. And I don't mean his personal growth as a decent human being. Or devil being, I guess.
As far as fanservice goes as conceptual design, the leaning toward more lewd tendencies isn't really all that surprising or new. Sex sells. That's how it is in the industry. Any industry. Just look at a movie like Phoenix 2072, and you'll find that the avant-garde usage of suggestion is more or less a no-brainer when it comes to selling you ideas, products, or just full-blown servicing the fans.
Whether or not this is ethical or justified isn't really my area of expertise, and even if it was, it would only be my opinion. But regardless, it isn't such a secret that is subliminally manipulative. I think if you're aware of the reasons behind the designs and the context they need, then you could go from there on those boundaries.
The motions of game behind the character story evolves from design and writing, where the audience can view and form their own respective opinion on said lead's feelings, actions, and even development. And it's this build-up in following the main character's perspective that makes the prominence of the role all the more important. Let's go back to that Caillou analogy. Sure, the little small fry acts like a bratty, entitled, very unlikable kid, but it's also important to remember that he is a kid. He's gonna need room to grow up and adapt as a human being, and that's not gonna be easy for a little cancer like him. Now, if you think I'm going a bit too soft on him, it's also important to remember that he is fictional. So the internet crucifixion of him still works wonders as an impromptu therapy session.
The point of view of a main character is kind of the point of them in the first place. While not every MC's POV is the ultimate route in which a story will go, given the amount of unexpected conflicts and twists the stories will have, they still need to serve as a catalyst where the audience can follow the plot concisely, while also granting their own unique input through the writing and development.
For example, a romance protagonist's focal writing would mostly consist of relationship points, while someone like Yagami would be closer to the obnoxiously smart, mundane task school of 4 parallel universes. Okay, given the circumstances, I can buy 2 crunchy taco supremes while also having enough change left over for laundry later. But Elle expects me to remember that and catch me off guard to expose me as Kira. However, our local Taco Bell doesn't have a cheaper item that I can so easily pass off as a mistake when ordering. He's gotta be on the lookout for intentional item swapping. And if I say I chose to order something else, it'd almost be like admitting defeat to him while also admitting to being in on this little game. I could say I wrote the order down. No, without having done it right in front of him, it's just fabricating evidence, which he's also gonna pick up on. Damn you, Elle. Damn you. That was a bit silly.
But it's not just the point of view we have to get across, we also have to use them as a tool.
Nihilism is so in right now.
What do these characters themselves have to offer as plot devices? Well, for plenty of shonen protagonists, they have to show decent idealism of heroism and humanity while also being jacked enough to deadlift a continental shelf. It's this fantastical essence paired with a reserved relatability that can push the ideas of internal and external strength. For comedic roles, it actually depends on what role it is. Characters like Yoshiko or Akihisa can act as walking gags, while others like Haruhi and Keima are more the reactionary types where the mere observation and sometimes victimhood of the jokes stylizes the show's comedy. And everyone else in between and beyond, like Gintoki, Kazuma, and Chiho.
As you can guess, the role the protag takes up is dependent on the genre and the formula that the story operates on. Revenge story protags operate as morally gray catharses, cute girls who do cute things are advertisers of said cute things, intentional or not, and so on and so forth. Of course, this won't always be the case, as there are going to be instances where the protagonist is just too unique, like Madoka's trauma or Gon's relentlessness. Now, the only major genre I argue really doesn't follow an MC status quo would be the horror genre, and to be honest, I really can't figure out why.
愛なんてそんなまずくて苦いもの。私は愛とは思えない。Principals always look like lesbians. 興味なく
And I'm sure it's nothing.
Sometimes the show itself can be defined by its lead. Trigun wouldn't work quite as well if it didn't have Vash's antics and jester-like profile because the show worked with its internal struggles with survivor's guilt and loneliness. A good part of what makes Your Lie and April tolerable is how the relationship between Arima and Kaori blooms beyond the likes to loves development as they push one another to achieve past their mental grievances. It's an emotional pull built on working with their transgressions in a smart and respectable way.
The other part of what makes it okay is how happy it all ends.
And this is the key to unlocking the next arbitrary rung on the lead ladder: recognition.
Remember when I told you the names of famous protagonists that I didn't even have to show you an image of to know who they were? Yeah, that's essentially what it is. It also works the other way around too, where I could show you an image and you would probably know who they were. Here, I'll show you. See?
Whether if it's the character that elevates the story or the story that elevates the character goes by case basis. The showcase of Tanjiro as a sympathetic, gentle soul who goes to extreme lengths to relieve his enemies of emotional pain shapes Demon Slayer's melancholic attitude many people grew attached to. Inversely, Tokyo Ghoul's Ken Kaneki is mostly remembered as an unfeeling edgelord driven by his trauma before and as a ghoul.
The thing about Kaneki is, he wasn't always like that, but even more interestingly, his other self is mostly remembered as Snowcap's complete opposite. And that's it. There really wasn't anything else that stood out for old Kaneki that Frosted Tips over here didn't overtake. And if there was, it really wasn't worth noting. Much like a lot of Tokyo Ghoul now that I think about it.
This is where fame can get bad. Inconsistent writing, boring designs, infamous behavior, uncertain focus, or just plainly aging like fine milk. These factors and more don't necessarily make the well-known poorly done, they just don't succeed in those parts their peers do. By all accounts, they're still well-known culturally and internationally, but it is indicative that a protagonist or a type could still make waves despite the major faults unintended for the global stage. Again, you can take the idea of the average anime protagonist and make the concept itself noteworthy, but if you don't do anything new or unique with your version of said average Joe, then you've effectively made a clone, like what Disney did with its child pop stars.
That said, if a show does manage to find a diamond in the rough, like, well, these guys, then they've effectively made fictional history. And as an anime fan, that's kind of exciting.
What it means culturally to impact the world of entertainment as well as the world itself means to make a statement and a timeless capsule of the growing philosophies, humors, and ideas of a period in time. From Bugs Bunny to Dorothy to Deadpool, these characters mean something and a lot to a ton of people who grew up with them, be it for laughs, values, or a new perspective they place on the world. And to see anime do that, while obvious given how ever-growing the medium is beautiful. It doesn't matter if it's a meathead like Luffy or a pioneer of anime existentialism like Shinji. People will hear these names, get to know them, and look into these stories that need to be heard and enjoyed. The great power that comes with the great responsibility in being an anime protagonist is a might that can level with the names of giants that came before them like Mickey Mouse and Superman. The genuine heart audiences give to their heroes is nothing short of breathtakingly loving. It's a welding of passion and connection between the struggles of a champion and the masses that root and jeer at them, fighting for dreams, love, survival, and yes, friendship. Anime protagonists exemplify the best and worst out of all of us, and perhaps they can even teach us how to be our own lead role.
And whatever type of lead you like following, hey, no big deal. We all have our faves. Me, personally, I like the snarky, smarmy, borderline assholes because of the wit and the comedy that can come out of them. But hey, that's just me. And I hope that you find the right lead that you like following, even if it's Kazuya. But now, if you'll excuse me, I need to get back to practice. Hey, just because I like the sarcastic jokes doesn't mean I can knock out the possibility of becoming one in another world. Wait, was that popping up down there this entire time? Man, I really don't pay attention enough to my own life.